Hey, it's Brianne Dick here. I'm the co-founder of the Visionary CEO Academy. And today I want to introduce you to the tool that we use with all of our clients to help them take their already fantastic offers and make them actually scalable. It's called the value map. And the reason that I love this tool is because not only does it help us, find ways for them to be able to serve more clients and to have a scalable offer, but it really hones in on what it takes to have an offer that as it scales will have more impact and be more profitable at the same time. And this is really important when you think about it, because most people, when they go to scale an offer, think about it as a trade-off, right? Either I'm going to go and I'm going to make it bigger groups, and I'm going to go and, maybe turn it into a program, or going to templatize everything, or what have you. And that creates a situation where, it's great for profitability, but it's not as good for the individual client, or vice versa. We are going to go and keep everything super high touch and super high focused and bespoke and custom and all of that. But that means that our profit margins are going to be stuck. And so what we want to have is we want to find a tool that doesn't do either of those things, right? We want to find a way to scale an existing offer that avoids all of those challenges. And in particular, there's three challenges that we need to avoid. Number one is we need to stop reinvention, right? Because the truth is that when you are at, just getting started your business, maybe you're coming to six figures, even getting into the low multi six figures, you're still figuring things out, right? You're figuring out what messaging is going to work, how you're going to sell things, how you're going to deliver them, and you're constantly experimenting. But the problem with that is that once you get to multi six figures and you're starting to want to approach seven figures, we get to a point where that causes us to be spread so thin, because we got so many different things we got to fit into our marketing calendar, so many different things we got to sell, different delivery methods, different operations, different way of structuring things. And it really becomes a problem because we're reinventing all of the time. And we've got so many different things that, it's too much. It's too much for us, and it's too much for our team. And the reason that it's too much for our team is because it's complicated, right? It's complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of things going on. Even if you only have one offer, it's so common that we end up putting in all kinds of different things into that offer, right? It's like, oh, this client needed this, we should add this. This client needed this, we should add this. Oh, there's a better way to do this. There's a better way to do that. And we build all of this complexity in, which not only creates complexity for us, but it also fire hoses our clients, right? Where they start to get overwhelmed because there's so much going on, and, they get overwhelmed, they get stressed out, and they're not able to get the kind of results that we want them to get. And then what happens on the team side is that because of all that complexity, we end up over hiring, because there's so many moving pieces, and there's so many things to market, and there's so many things to sell, and there's so much going on in delivery, that we end up needing more and more time, and therefore more and more people, to be able to do all of those things and manage all of those things. And that's a huge drain on profit, because we're reinventing all the time. We've got too much complexity. Our clients aren't getting the best results they can, and we're overhired, not exactly what we want for scalability. And so when it comes to the value map and what we're really trying to accomplish with this tool, it comes down to to three simple things. I don't know why I wrote two. I'll start with number one. The first thing that we want is something that is going to be reliable, right? Something that we know how we're going to sell it, how we're going to market it, how we're going to deliver it. We don't need to be reinventing because it's solid, right? We want something that feels like it's there, that we don't have to keep going back and tweaking it and changing it. We can think about something else. We can figure out, solutions to different problems, right? We want something that is solid and that we know this is how we market it, this is how we sell it, this is how we deliver it. What that means is that it's going to be as simple as possible, simple for us and for our clients, right? We want to strip away everything that's unnecessary, strip away everything that's not getting results, strip away all of the things that aren't providing value to us or to the clients, right? We want simple and streamlined and optimized, because when it's simple and streamlined and optimized, that means it's efficient, right? That means that it's going to be efficient. And it also means that it's going to be more effective because our team doesn't have to focus on all the different things. They don't have to be trying to do a million different things and manage a half a dozen different products and be figuring out this and that and all that kind of stuff. They can be focused on really creating results that are really focused and really are effective, right? Effective for the clients and therefore effective for the business. That's what we want. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about creating a scalable offer, an infinitely scalable offer. That's what the value map is here to create for us. Now we're going to go through the value map together. I'm going to walk you through how it works and how to use it to get these results. If you're watching this in the Facebook group, you can just go ahead and comment workbook below, and we will go ahead and we will send you a copy of this so you can start building your own value map. If you're watching this anywhere else on the interwebs, there should be a link or a button below this video where you can click it, enter your information, download it, and you'll get the worksheet so that you can be filling this in and going through it all on your own. All right. So let's talk about the idea of the value map. Why do we build a value map? Why isn't it enough to just list out all the things that we do in our offer or a program or a service and just say, oh, we don't need that anymore. We don't need that. Why do we actually need to go through this process of building a value map? Well, the reason is that when it comes to value in a business, we're really talking about an exchange of value, an exchange between the client or the customer and the business, right? It's not just that we're giving value to the client, right? It's not just what we're delivering. That would be part of how we give value to the client, but it's also how the client provides value to us in terms of money, right? Money, but as you know, it's not just money, right? It's money, time, energy, all of those resources, right? Money, time, and energy. I don't remember the symbol I usually use for energy. Let's go with a happy face today. Money, time, and energy needs to be given to the business from the client, right? We need it to be profitable, in other words, and not just for the business in return to be delivering to the client in terms of actual results from just the program, but we need to be able to provide value through our marketing and through our sales process. And we need to be able to provide value in terms of results. And we need to be able to provide value in a way that doesn't overwhelm them, right? And so when we're looking at going through the value map, what we're really talking about here is looking at these two forces and saying, where are we providing value to the client, to the customer, and where is the client providing value to us as a business? And when we look at our business, our offer through this lens, we're able to map out places where maybe we're providing a lot of value to the client, but they're not providing an equitable amount of value to us, right? We're over delivering and we're not charging enough, or we're not making enough money. Vice versa, we can see places where maybe we're doing stuff that's super efficient, super effective for the business, but it's at the cost of the value to the client. And so we're not holding up our part of the value exchange. And when it comes to creating scalability, scalability comes when these things are able to remain in sync, right? When the value to the business is properly balanced with the value to the client, and the value to the client is properly balanced with the value to the business. When those are in sync, we create scalability because we can continue to get more results for more people, and we can do it in a way that is profitable in terms of time, money, and energy. In order for us to be able to map that value exchange, then there's a few things that we need to be able to map out, right? We need to be able to figure out a few key details about what's happening so that we can create this analysis of, where is the value? Is it in balance or out of balance? And that starts off by focusing on what is actually happening, right? What is literally taking place? What is the client doing? What are we doing? What is the value being exchanged? You can think of this, if you want, as steps in your process. You can think of this, if you want, as the key activities or the key deliverables that go into your your product or your program or your service or whatever it happens to be. But what's happening? First, we need to know what's happening so that we can look at it and say, what's actually happening? What's actually going on here? We can't analyze the exchange of value unless we know in detail, in gratuitous detail, what all of the little bits and pieces are. And by what, I don't just mean at a high level, this is, we have an onboarding call. I mean, going into the details and saying, what questions do we ask in that onboarding call? What do we look at? What do we ask? What does the client tell us? Going into the details of what all of those things are, because unless you go to the super fine details, you're not going to be able to evaluate if something is valuable to the client or valuable to the business at the level that we need. And so that's where we start, is by mapping out in all of those fine detail in this call, what happens in this deliverable, what are all the pieces of it in this module, what are all of the tools, the steps, the things that they go through, what are all of the things that they experience, what happens in detail is really a reflection of what is the value that we are trying to exchange. The second piece of it is who does it, right? So not just what is it, but who does it. Now, this could be someone on your team. It could be you. It could be something that happens automatically, or it could be the client, right? Each of the things that happens is something that someone or something has to be responsible for. And when we look at these details of, each of the steps and what happens in each of them, and then we compare that with the details of who's doing it, we can start to see places where maybe we're not being super efficient. Maybe we've got, handoffs happening back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And no wonder it feels complicated. No wonder it feels like balls are getting dropped, because we've got so many moving pieces going on. Maybe there's places where you realize that you're doing things manually that could be done automatically. Maybe you realize that there are things that are happening automatically that should be being done with a little more human touch, because if you put in a little more human touch, it would simplify things down the road, right? So figuring out and looking at who does each of those key details in the what section is the next thing you need to focus on when you're building your value map. And then the third and fourth components are the analysis tools that we use. And we're not going to go too deeply into those today, because just doing the what and the who step is usually enough to give people really big light bulb moments about why their offer isn't scalable and how to address it. So we'll do another training later on in terms of these other two key considerations, which are V2C, or value to customer, or value to client if you prefer, and V2B, which is value to business, right? And that's where we can get into the nitty gritty of that value exchange that we talked about in the previous diagram, where it's, how much value is being received by the client, how much is being received by the business, and are those things in balance, right? And this is where we go into the details and we really do a detailed analysis of the value exchange. But even just by going through the process and saying, what is happening and who does it, it creates an amazing lens for you to be able to look at your delivery, look at your sales, look at your marketing, look at all of these things, and be able to identify where things are being over delivered, where things are overly complicated, right? One of the things that people often find as they do their value map is that there's a whole lot of steps. There's a lot more going on than they thought. And it's like, no wonder we're tired. No wonder things are getting missed. This is way too complicated. And so that's why this value map is so very vital, and why it's such a key thing for you to do when it comes to figuring out, how do I make my offer more scalable, right? It's not just about taking some arbitrary model and saying, oh, I'm going to turn this into a course or turn it into a program. No, we don't want you rebuilding. We want you to stop reinventing. Instead, we want you to look at what you're already doing and say, how can we simplify it? How can we optimize it? How can we streamline it? And how can we make it better? Ultimately, what that looks like is a very simple table. There's an example here in the workbook. Some people like to do this in a spreadsheet, whatever form works for you. And when it comes to going and filling it out, you just really simply go ahead and start writing in it. What happens? Well, in demand gen, the first thing that we need to do is say, how do we generate demand for our program? How do new people that have never heard of us, how do they hear about us? Maybe we do guesting on podcasts. Okay, so what are all the steps that go into guesting on podcasts? Well, there's probably research. There's probably customizing a pitch. There might be following them on social. There might be sending the pitch, right? And you go through and you say, these are all the things. And, eventually we get down to the point where the last thing is, share appearance on social, right? And whatever the steps are between those things, right? So you go through and you list out, okay, this is just for me to get guest appearances on podcasts as part of our demand gen. What are all of the things that happen? And then who does it? Well, maybe this is the VA, this is me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you go through and you say, okay, these are all the things that happen. And these are all of the different people that do it. And as you can see, as you get into this process and you get into this level of detail, you're going to realize just how much is happening in this section of the value map. Similarly, you can go down, you can do this for demand gen, for demand nurture, hand raisers, inviting to a buying convo, the actual sales process itself, and then you can do it for your delivery, right? So in terms of your onboarding process, from the moment someone clicks buy, what happens? Maybe there is, click buy is the client. And then maybe there is a contract that gets sent. And then the contract needs to be signed. And then maybe there is an account that needs to be set up. Right. And so on and so forth. And then, there's another thing. There's an onboarding call. And what are all the things you address in that call? Well, there's probably a welcome. And there's logistics. And there's, get to know you. Right? Whatever the kind of points of the agenda of that call are. And you go through and you say, okay, these are all of the things that happen. And this is who does it, right? The contract is sent automatically. It's always worthwhile, by the way, when you have something done automatically to say, okay, it's done automatically. Who's responsible for managing it, maintaining it, make sure that happens and fixing it if it doesn't, right? Maybe that's still you. Then the client needs to do it. But what happens if the client doesn't send it, right? There might be, or sign it, there might be some follow-up. So what's the follow-up look like? Is that automated as well? And if so, who manages it? Is that you? Is that the VA, right? How does those things happen? Who gets the account set up? All of these kind of things. On the onboarding call, the welcome, the logistics, when it's an agenda, we don't necessarily go into too much detail, but you can say, this is a 60-minute Zoom call, right? And it happens with me and the project manager and the client, right? And maybe that's true for everything, all of those sub steps, right? You go through and you list out all of the pieces, all of the steps, all of the things that are going on. And just by virtue of looking at it at this level and at this detail, you are going to see so much more about where you're inefficient, where things are or aren't working, why things have been, maybe falling through the cracks than you have before, not only because you're looking at what happens, but you're looking at all of the handoffs and all of the places where someone does something and then someone else has to do something else, and where all of these passing off of information happens. And just by doing this value map, you're able to go through and you'll be able to say, this is why things feel efficient. This is where we've got stuff happening that is way too complicated. This is why it feels like we've got too much work to do and not enough people to do it, right? You end up overhired, you end up over delivering, you end up fire hosing your clients, you end up with something that's too complicated, you end up in all of these problem areas that we don't want. And what the value map shows you is the root cause of where all of that comes. Now, as I said, there's another component to the value map, which is actually going in and assessing the value given and value received, which will help you to answer, how do I fix these things? But that is another video for another day. This one's already getting pretty long. And frankly, just going through and doing the value map on its own is such a worthwhile activity that I don't want to give you the next steps. I just want you to go ahead. I want you to dive in. I want you to do your value map. If you want a copy of the worksheet, again, you can just go ahead and comment workbook below. If you're watching this in the Facebook group, if you're watching this anywhere else, there will be a link. You just click that link and it'll take you to the download. You can get this. You can start filling it in for yourself. And it really is by far the best way to figure out why your offer isn't scalable, so that then you can start to identify the specific places that you need to adjust, tweak, modify, so that you can create true scalability with your offer and you can create an infinitely scalable business. That's what the value map gives you. I hope that you found this super valuable. No pun intended. And we'll do another training later on where we go in and we talk about the actual V2C, V2B analysis process using color coding. But until then, we'll see you later. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.